All right, let's talk about something we use for, well, pretty much everything, our hands. But here's the thing. Are we actually protecting them the right way? Today, we're going to slice through all the myths and get right to the facts about hand safety.
So let me ask you this right off the bat. When you're on the job and you think hand safety, what is the very first thing that pops into your head? Your first line of defense.
Go on, think about it for a second. If the word gloves was the first thing that came to mind,
Then, my friend, you are in exactly the right place. Because that answer, which is super common, by the way, is one of the biggest myths in workplace safety, and we're about to bust it wide open.
So here it is, the big one. The idea that gloves are your first line of defense, it's just completely backwards. The truth is, personal protective equipment, PPE, is always, and I mean always, the last resort. The real first lines of defense are things like putting guards on machines or having safe work procedures. Gloves, they're what you reach for only when those other things can't get the risk down to zero.
So before we can even think about picking the right armor, we gotta know the enemy, right? We have to understand exactly what we're up against. So let's map out the danger zone and see what threats are lurking.
And first up, we've got a nasty one, puncture wounds. Think sharp, pointy things that can cause some really deep injuries.
okay, time for a little pop quiz. Take a look at this list of common tools. Which one of these is the primary puncture hazard?
If you picked the nail gun, you got it. But what's really important here is what this slide shows us. Every single tool has its own specific danger. A conveyor belt? It'll abrade you or pinch you. A belt sander is going to scrape you up. And a welding torch? That's a serious burn. Each one needs a totally different kind of defense.
All right, let's keep going. Next up is another really common threat, crush injuries. We're talking about force and compression.
It's probably one of the most basic tools in any kit. But what kind of injury do you usually associate with a simple hammer?
You got it, crush. And this is a great example of how even the simplest tools can pose a huge risk. But crush injuries don't just come from hammers, right? They can come from massive machinery, like presses, or just from dropping something heavy. It's a really serious risk that's all over the place.
And we can't forget about the dangers you can't even see. Harmful substances are a massive threat because some of them can be absorbed right through your skin. We're talking solvents getting into your bloodstream or corrosives causing just devastating burns. So what's the big takeaway here? You have to check the safety data sheet, the SDS. That's the playbook that tells you exactly what you're dealing with and how to stay safe.
And that brings us to a super important point. Now that we know the different kinds of enemies, we have to choose our armor. And this is where another giant myth pops up. The idea that, any old glove will do the trick.
So let's put this to the test. True or false? A single type of chemical-resistant glove is all you need to protect you from every chemical you might run into.
Yeah, that is a big resounding false. Just look at this chart. The differences are night and day. Butyl gloves? Great for acids, but they're useless against hydrocarbons. Nitrile is your go-to for oils and greases. And then you have PVA gloves, which are amazing for strong solvents, but get this, they literally dissolve in water. Picking the wrong glove isn't just a mistake, it's actually dangerous.
And when it comes to electrical work, this need for specifics gets even more serious. This is absolutely not a one-size-fits-all game. Electrical gloves are rated in classes, and look at how the protection just skyrockets with each level. Using a Class 00 glove on a Class 4 job, that's not just a mistake, that could be a fatal one. You have to match the glove to the voltage.
Okay, so you've figured out the hazard, you've picked the perfect glove, your job is done, right? Nope, not even close. This next part is all about you, the person wearing the gear, and how you take care of it.
Here's another trap that's really easy to fall into, that feeling of being invincible once you've got your gear on. So, true or false? Once you put on the right pair of gloves, you're pretty much bulletproof.
False again. And this is so important. Gloves are not some kind of magic force field. They all have a breaking point that can fail in extreme heat or cold, under too much force, or if they're exposed to a chemical they just aren't designed for. The one thing you have to burn into your memory is this. You need to know the limits of your equipment. And that information, it's right there in the manufacturer's recommendations. You just have to read it.
And that's exactly why doing a pre-use inspection is completely non-negotiable, especially for chemical gloves. It literally takes seconds. First, you just look for any obvious damage, cracks, holes, anything. Then you trap some air inside, roll it down toward the fingers, and listen for any little hissing sounds. Even a pinhole makes that glove useless. If you find anything wrong, you toss it. Immediately. No exceptions.
All right, now let's talk about a step that gets overlooked way too often. You've finished the job, you've been safe, but now all that hazardous stuff is all over your gloves. If you take them off the wrong way, you can undo all that careful work in an instant.
There's a very specific technique for this, and it's simple. First, you pinch the outside of one glove at your wrist and peel it down, turning it completely inside out. Now, hold that glove you just took off in your still gloved hand. Next, you slide your clean, ungloved fingers under the wrist of the glove that's still on. Then you peel that second glove off, turning it inside out over the first one. See? It contains the contamination. And please, don't forget the final critical step. Wash your hands thoroughly.
Okay, let's pull all these threads together now. Because at the end of the day, smart hand safety isn't just about wearing a pair of gloves. It's a whole system. It's a way of thinking based on awareness and personal responsibility.
So if you remember anything from this, remember these key points. 1. Always assess the specific hazard before you do anything. 2. Select your gloves based on how they perform against that specific threat. 3. Inspect your gear before every single use. 4. Taking them off correctly is just as important as putting them on. And finally, the big one we started with, PPE is and will always be your very last line of defense. So I'm going to leave you with one final question to think about. Your gloves protect your hands, but who protects your gloves? The answer is you. You do, by choosing smart, inspecting carefully, and using them the right way. Thanks for tuning in.